You could basically summarize everything that's going wrong in customer success is that customer success had really lost its focus. I feel it's no longer about putting the customer to the center, but your own processes, technologies, playbooks, etc., etc. All these things are happening. So we see so many customer success managers that are really stuck in doing reactive work, exactly because they don't put the customer to the center and build everything around it.
Okay. Salutations, folks, and thank you for joining us. You're listening to Lifetime Value, the customer success podcast, where we help you wrap up the week that was in customer success and get you off on the right foot for the one ahead of you. I am your host, the Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson of Customer Success Podcasts. My name is Dylan Young, and this week's guest of honor is the CEO of Remarkable. He's an omnipresent contributor to the CS community and all the conversations within it. Perhaps most importantly, though, he is the reigning champion of customer success-related memes. Prove me wrong. Lifers, we have Markus Rentsch with us today. Markus, thank you for being here.
Hey Dylan, thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. So can you tell us just briefly about Remarkable, what you do there and what it provides?
Yeah, Remarkable is a customer success consultancy run by myself. And I help SaaS companies to deliver, grow, and monetize customer value.
How did you get started with Remarkable? What's your history with customer success?
Yeah, so I started with Remarkable about 6 years ago, but pivoted into customer success only about 2.5 years ago. So in the beginning, I had a different focus. So I worked with SaaS companies as well, but I helped them to find their positioning and develop their business strategy. And yeah, you could say I entered customer success by accident because it's been back in the days when I was working with a client where we defined, as I said, the positioning for the company. And the founder then asked me, how do we make sure that customers get what we are promising? And that ring the bell.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I started to dive into customer success. So I didn't even know the term back then in the days. But I hit Google and yeah, did some research and realized that there actually is already something that a term for what I'm looking for, or
Mm-hmm.
what the founder was talking about.
And so now you do it full time. It's what Remarkable now
Yes,
focuses on. Why did you make that pivot?
yeah, because I've realized that there's a long way between positioning where you define the outcomes you want to deliver to your customers and to the final execution where customers get what you've promised. And so now I'm covering basically the whole customer journey, you could say, from setting expectations to meeting them and beyond, of course, because customer success, it doesn't have a finite end, because as soon as customers achieve their initial goal, they will move on and raise the bar and want to grow their value, to further grow their value and get more and move on to the next goal.
Yeah, of course. And it's our job to stay in lockstep with them, make sure that we're following them down that path. What would it be like if we shook their hand at the end of that first customer journey and just said, "All right, see you later"? And so at what point did you start to become more outspoken within the CS community?
Basically at the same time. So when I dug into customer success for the first time, I also realized that on LinkedIn there's a lot of people who are writing about it, and I followed some of the thought leaders in the space, Jane Afen, Jeff Brunsbeck, Nick Meda. I followed these guys and yeah, liked and commented on the posts, and yeah, it got some resonance. And then like a month or so later, I started to put out my own content.
Wow, only a month, 30 days later. I didn't start this
Yeah,
podcast for years.
maybe it's been 40 days. I'm not, I don't exactly remember, but soon after.
Still not bad. Markus, you want to jump into a couple of topics that have happened in the past week?
Yeah, the most frequent topic in the past week and the past, let's say, 3 months is really, it's all about customer value. So it's funny. So like a year ago, all the people that wanted to work with me basically came because of churn. So they wanted
Mm.
to improve the retention rate. But now I'm seeing a complete pivot into really focusing customer success teams on identifying, operationalizing, measuring, and also communicating value. So it's really weird. So all the people that reach out to me lately came for this particular purpose in mind.
Isn't that really, though, them understanding the motions it takes to prevent churn? Is that communication of value? Isn't that kind of the primary way to prevent churn? There's two
Yeah,
sides of the
exactly. Of
same
course, it's
coin, right?
it's it's connected,
Yeah,
but now I feel like more and more people are realizing that the connection
sure.
between customer success and churn and delivering value, because churn is the opposite of customer success, basically. I mean, there are probably still a lot of people who think that the opposite of churn is retention. But retention is only a formality that happens when you deliver enough value to the customers.
What if I were to throw the variable in there of poor customer product fit? Those are people we don't want them to churn. We don't want to say goodbye to that revenue, but that kind of changes your perspective on what maybe the opposite of churn is, right?
Yeah, so let's say that the last 6 or 7 months have changed a lot of things in the SaaS and the
Sure.
customer success space. Before, everybody was just about revenue. So if you had a bad fit customer, no one would like to allow the customer success team to fire these customers. But
True.
now, when they are realizing, okay, there's a bad fit customer and the customer pays some revenue, but it costs us twice as much to maintain that customer, we're hurting our profitability and we're losing money in the end.
Mhm.
And that shift of perspective, it's really coming. It's maybe slowly, and maybe it's too late for many companies, but it's I see it really changing, and that's a good thing. But the real problem is that there are so many companies who have ignored it for such a long time, and now they're sitting on a customer portfolio that is really bad. So where customer success managers spend a lot of time working with bad and mediocre fit customers and have not enough time for the great customers. So you're basically losing twice. You're serving the customers you shouldn't have acquired in the first place, and you don't have enough time to deliver more value to the great fit customers that would be ready to buy more from you if they get a proof of value. So we're talking about specific costs of customer service and lost opportunity costs at the same time.
I might add in there the dimension of culture, because everything you just said could very easily be solved if the folks at the top said, okay, shift your focus and your priority to the great fit customers and actively reduce the amount of time you spend on your bad fit, or as you said, your mediocre fit customers. But if that is not a shift that leadership is willing to make, or they simply can't even see that because of the culture, the fiber of the way the company operates, you're going to have challenges because of that as well.
Yeah, so in the past, the real issue was that customer success teams were really at the receiving end of the food chain, you could say.
Hmm.
So they got a product and the customer to work with, and they had no chance to change these things. So if the company really ran at a growth at all costs business model, which most of
Most
them
of them
did
did.
in the
Yep.
past, and then you have these bad and mediocre fit customers I've mentioned before. It's really hard to change things from basically it's like companies feel like they can simply pull a switch and everything changes. But that's not how it works. So if you have spent the last 3 4 years acquiring every customer with a pulse, then you can simply change to acquiring high quality customers
Certainly not
by
overnight.
tomorrow. Let's
Yeah.
let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. So most companies, they don't even have the data to understand, okay, who really is a great customer. So because they haven't measured customer profitability, only revenue, and they haven't defined, okay, we have this customer, and this our high growth customer that buys more every 6 months from us. Why is this happening? What's the secret of this customer to be so successful? So to understand, okay, is there a pattern among our best customers? What do they have in common? So that they find something they can actively be looking for when they're acquiring customers for the customer qualification. When I see ideal customer profiles, it's usually like, yeah, it's from this industry, this size, this revenue, etc., etc. But that's not an ideal customer. I mean, this that's basic firmographics. Everybody can dig that information up on the internet. So you need to understand, okay, what makes an ideal customer your ideal customer? That data and that knowledge, it's missing everywhere. So we have marketing teams sitting there, or sales teams that work with assumptions about who is the ideal customer. But
but they've never
it's really
verified it.
worthless if you haven't verified it
Yeah.
from your existing customer base. That's why I say the first step to go into that direction would be to reverse engineer your ideal customer profiles based on your existing customer base.
How do you recommend they
But
do that?
first, you need to determine, okay, who are our best customers, and what characteristics or knowledge or skills, what do they possess? What is the secret sauce to becoming successful, and in return becoming highly profitable for us?
Got it. So it's interesting. You kicked us off. You immediately took control of the conversation, and what you actually said is in a bit of competition with one of the topics I first wanted to bring up, which is this post that Rachel Provan had on LinkedIn, basically putting prerequisites in place before you can allow your customer success team to be responsible for expansion opportunities, whether it's upsell or cross sell. And what she basically said is, if you haven't achieved churn rates below 10% annually, you haven't automated parts of your business via a customer success platform, and or you haven't given the CS team any sales training, then you're setting everyone up for failure. So I know that this is on the revenue side. You're more focused on the ICP side right now, but does that resonate with you? Do you agree with that? Would you add any more prerequisites?
Yeah, to some extent I agree with it. But when I'm talking about customer success managers creating revenue, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to close the deals yourself, but you need to create a demand for it. What I keep saying is that selling to existing customers is completely different than selling to new customers. Why? Because new customers buy based on the value they expect to get from your product. And your existing customers will only buy more if you already deliver the proof of value. So there's no way you can sell to these customers without delivering first. And that makes it completely different, even when there are many people that, yeah, negating it. Yeah, so it's not like you can send your executive or account manager to upsell these customers before they haven't got value, just because you have to achieve some kind of quota. That simply doesn't work. Yeah, but if you give your CSMs the opportunity to close the deals themselves, they probably should get some sales training, unless the product is really simple. If we're talking about complex enterprise contracts, most likely not the best idea to have your CSMs do it at all. But in other situation, when you have a simple product where you sell a few more features to the customer, it should be really easy, because in the end, it's not you who is selling, but it's the customer outcomes that do the selling for you. So you don't go to a customer and tell them, dear customer, please buy more of our features, but you should move the conversation in a direction where I say, hey, dear customer, since we've started working together, you have improved your, I don't know, you have saved 30% of time doing that kind of activity in your company. I don't know, maybe you have reduced your project time, delivery time by 30% or something like this. And then you can sell really and show the customers, okay, with the current package, you've achieved already such a great outcome. If you buy these and these features, you can get even more. And customers think, okay, it's true, I already got a lot of value. And then they will expect that it will work out again. Why should it why shouldn't it work out? But it's always, you should always do the revenue, that the value, sorry, not the revenue, the value do the talking for you.
It sounds like you might then, and I'm totally putting words in your mouth here, but it sounds like you might actually take out the sales training portion and instead replace that with a relentless focus on communicating value to the customer. And then I always talk a lot about how customer success can be another lead generation source, because I tend to agree with you. Sales should control the sales process. They're very good at it for a reason, and allow customer success to focus further upstream on communicating value and identifying white space opportunity. And as soon as they do, throw it over the fence to sales. That was a lot of words, but does that essentially align with your thought process?
Yeah, it's one possibility. As I've said, you can pass the opportunities to your sales team, or you close them yourself. But there's one thing that's really strange, and I see it in so many companies. So it's basically customer success managers doing almost all the work, and then you have your account managers, account executive close the expansion deal, or close the upselling,
And get paid on
and
it.
they get all the commission for it.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
It's really odd. I mean, these customers would never buy more from you without getting the value first. It's really strange, and that's also something I try to tell customer success leaders I'm working with, or I'm communicating with, that you should get a commission or a bonus based on the additional revenue you create, because you are the source of the additional value.
Do you find that as do you get a lot of pushback when you say that about we should be compensating customer success more on this variable structure and on the revenue that they help bring through the door? Do you get a lot of pushback on that, or do they all say, "Yeah, I agree"?
Yeah, most of them agree, but on the other hand, they don't want to own a revenue number.
Mm.
But that will obviously not work out. You need to take responsibility for revenue to get the commission, but also to get out of the corner of being viewed as glorified customer support or a cost center.
Wow, I like
Many
that.
many
Yeah.
CS teams suffer from that being perceived that way. But the only way to get out of it is to align yourself with revenue,
Take
and also
accountability.
to promote yourself to your leadership by showing what your revenue contributions, the contributions you've made to the company, because your CEO, CFO, they don't care about your net promoter scores or how often customers use the product. They really don't care, but they care about revenue now even more than ever before. And if you want to gain more influence, get perceived differently, you need to create revenue. But as I said, you don't have to close deals yourself, but you need to create a demand for it at least.
That's owning the number, right? You're hearing a lot about that lately.
Exactly.
Customer success has to own a number. How about this then? Because we're talking about value, communicating value. I've got this other hot take that I saw this week that basically said, is it time to do away with return on investment as a key talking point? And so this came from Morica Georgieva. I hope that I am pronouncing that correctly. And it was based on, she had just finished reading Dave Jackson's book regarding B2B businesses are missing the mark, focusing on ROI, and should instead be focused on the wants and needs of the individuals within the companies we serve and sell to them. Well, I think that's a bit of splitting hairs. Does that statement resonate with you? Does ROI typically equal the value that we're trying to communicate? Because if it does, then I think maybe your answer is that you don't agree with that. But am I misreading this statement or misunderstanding this statement?
No, it's how we define return on investment.
Yeah, right?
Return on investment doesn't necessarily refer to some kind of money. You get paid back some money, because at the end of the day, we are delivering value to humans.
Hmm.
So you can deliver any number you want, but it's the human behind that decides whether these numbers are valuable. So if you help your customers to close more deals, let's say that you're selling a sales software or something like this, you help your customers close more deals. Is that what they're really looking for, to close more deals? Or do they want the benefit of the benefit? So maybe if they close more deals and get paid more, they can buy their dream house, get promoted, sleep better at night, whatever. And that's also an ROI, because ROI doesn't have to be some kind of money you get, because there are so many ways people perceive value. But you need to understand what's the value your customers are really after. So what's behind these numbers? What do customers want?
It could be that Morica's point is that those success criteria differ for each individual that you interact with at a company, or segment of individual that interacts with your product or service. In which case, I would agree. You need to be able to communicate value to each one of those individuals. But I think ultimately, to your point, it comes back to ROI. It's not necessarily the value of the dollars that they spend on your product. It could be time. What's the value of the time
Let's
they spend on
let's
your product?
let's bring a simple example. If you're going to a football match, a football game,
Ooh, what kind of football?
let's say American football.
Oh, wow. You should have said real football.
Okay. If you're going to a game, you also expect some kind of return investment. So you pay for the cards,
Hmm.
for the tickets, and what do you expect? Most likely, you expect to have a great time,
Yeah. Excitement.
and
Yeah.
that also counts as an ROI. So if you didn't have a good time, and the next 5 games you also didn't have a good time, you will probably stop going to the next game and the next game, and will stop watching these games. It's really such a universal principle. If we are investing money or time or effort, we always want to get some kind of ROI, whatever it may be.
Yeah. She goes on to state a couple of different things, but there was a point in here that I thought was valuable, and it dovetails into there's quite a few people talking about the same thing, not the least of which was Kevin Chu this week, and maybe we can talk a little bit more about that. But she said we should be partners to product teams to help them include clear value metrics available immediately inside the product, so personas like the CFO don't need to spend time trying to decipher our value. And Kevin Chu said something similar. He was doing a takedown of the QBR, essentially saying the QBR is useless if you can instead put that value in front of the customers on a daily basis and help them feel it and see it. And while I want to give you an opportunity here, but first thing I'll say is I totally agree with that notion, except rarely is the CFO going to be a part of that. Rarely is the CFO going to extrapolate the individual success metrics that individual users care about and aggregate that into a success metric that makes sense for the CFO.
Yeah, that's true. So for different stakeholders, expect different return investments, respectively, value to receive from the product. So, and as you've said, it's very likely that there are different value perceptions between the user and the CFO. I would also like to talk about the QBRs. So a QBR, it's not bad by design, but it's how people run it. Customer success managers made it a presentation instead of a conversation, and they made it about themselves and the company and not the customer. These are the fundamental problems. And of course, if you are invited to I don't know 10 QBRs every quarter,
Mm,
you will only participate in those that provide any value for you. And it's very unlikely that you will join a QBR where your vendor is talking about themselves. So to me, a QBR's purpose is to, as the wording says, to do a review of what you've achieved in the past 3, 6, 9, 12 months working together, and to also have an opportunity to get feedback, to adapt the customer success plan, to discuss, okay, what are the things that worked, what didn't work, and why. So for me, it's a strategic asset to really to lead and direct our customers. But we need to get together and talk about what's going on and what matters. If you okay, you can display some value metrics in the product, but it's not always that easy.
hmm Yes. So when I read that, that's exactly what I said. I was like, oh, well, isn't that nice for a mature product? Or if you're thinking about that from day one when you start developing your product, But for those of us who are coming to this, and I don't mean myself specifically, but we're coming to this a little bit later in the game, maybe we built the product very specifically to do what we thought was causing people pain, but didn't think about how to build a rear view mirror that shows them how we solve that pain. Well, that's a much harder road to travel.
For some products, it's relatively easily. If again, if you're selling a sales product, you
Mhm.
can measure okay the number of leads, opportunities converted into sales, etc., etc. But if you have a different product, let's say a customer feedback tool, how do you measure the customer value within the product? It's really hard. So okay, you can count how much feedback pieces of feedback you got. You can maybe use some language processing that tells you okay, that was a positive feedback, that was a negative feedback. But at the end of the day, you can't measure what your customer did with that kind of feedback. So did they successfully create additional product features that grew their revenue by $10 million? That's impossible to measure. So you could only measure it if you are actually talking to your customer.
And I think so. I want to loop back to the comment I made. It sounded like I was poo pooing Morica's idea, and I want to make sure that it's clear that I wasn't, but rather identifying what I think is probably a pretty common challenge of if you are building a product to solve for the pain of an individual contributor, then you should know in the very fabric of your organization what the values that your product provides in solving that pain for that individual contributor. But the further you go up the chain, even to that individual's manager and then that manager's manager, until you reach the CFO, those numbers become more abstract and they are dealing with more abstract thoughts and processes. How do you recommend translating value that is very clearly measured at that individual contributor level and making it clear and easy to understand for somebody at that C-suite level?
Yeah, so the first requirement is to understand it yourself. That's actually something many companies lack of. So it sounds funny, but I'm asking this simple question, do you know whether your customers are successful? 9 out of 10 companies don't have an answer for it.
Hmm.
They just assume that their customers are successful because they're still there. But,
Yeah.
but they
Okay.
couldn't even exactly even tell us or tell me what is that customers actually got out of the product.
Hmm.
What's the specific value they extracted? So that's why everybody is literally selling the same thing. So when you go on a website of a software company, you see something like the modern solution, the smart solution. So really generic stuff like this, but there's nowhere something to find where it says, okay, if you buy a product, this is what you got. This is what 95% of our customers got out of the product. So you really need to develop a really in-depth understanding. Okay, what is it that our customers got, and that will only happen if you actually talk to your customers. And if you talk to your customers, then you can also make sure that your customers are actually aware of the value they get. So we should also not assume that when we deliver value, that customers always understand. Okay, hey, really got a lot of from the product so far, and that's great. And the best way to promote the value you've created for a customer is to have the people who are using the product doing the promoting for you to their manager and to their CFO.
In the same way, salespeople and even customer success, I've done this personally, are more than willing to help somebody build a business case for a new product they're trying to sell. I feel like we should think more or offer more about building business cases that show value to somebody's manager or their manager's manager. To your point.
I mean, as I've said, some outcomes are really straightforward. If you've created more sales by using the product, it's really hard for a CFO to yeah to miss the point.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But there are obviously different products where it's harder to measure and harder to promote. But you need to really care about it.
If we go back though to this idea of the QBR, and I think the QBR is being unnecessarily taken down at every turn these days. I actually think that's one of the main values of a QBR is your opportunity to speak to power, folks in the C-suite or VPs, SVPs, and it's an opportunity for you to help translate the value that those individual contributors are seeing and show them that you understand their business and how that value climbs the ladder and reaches somebody like a CFO. I think that's part of it's a huge opportunity to get in front of those folks.
Exactly, yeah, and then most companies they miss it because, as I've said, they make it all about themselves,
Hmm.
and that sucks. So they are presenting customers with usage metrics or what's on their product roadmap, etc. But they really don't care. They want you to talk about their business and talk about how you've created value for the business
Hmm.
and how you create more. So for me, the QBR it's a review, but it should also be used for planning and doing a preview. So we've completed these steps. These are the next steps, and then also talk about okay, what are we going to accomplish with every step? Your customers will rarely achieve the desired outcomes in a short term. So it will probably take months or even years or 1 year, 2 years, etc. So you need to ensure that your customers keep investing in your product.
Hmm.
And so when I'm talking about investing, it's not only about money but also time and effort.
Right.
And that's also really the most important part of custom onboarding. You need to give your customers quick wins to get their buy-in for playing the long game, because they will only play the long game if they see okay, things have worked out great so far. I'm really optimistic that this is the right product and we are heading into the right direction. And if we put in the time, money, and effort, we will achieve our outcomes in 3, 6, or whatever months. And that's what you need to focus on. You could basically summarize everything that's going wrong in customer success is that customer success has really lost its focus. I feel it's no longer about putting the customer to the center, but your own processes, technologies, playbooks, etc., etc. All these things are happening that we see in customer success. So we see so many customer success managers that are really stuck in doing reactive work. Why is
Hmm.
this happening? Exactly because they don't put the customer to the center and build everything around it. So they build something, and when things go wrong, they need to apply bandit solutions and do the firefighting. That's the connection between. But if we if we understand, okay, what our customers needs, what our customers goals, what do we need to deliver, how can we measure the performance of the inputs we deliver, then we can build. I like to call it a customer success program
Hmm.
that makes customers successful accurately and repeatedly. What I've seen in the past, and then yeah, it's even happening now, is many teams are really what I call they apply a bunch of random tactics. So they put out some content to the customers, they create some webinars, etc., and hope for the best. But it's really not really dedicated to closing the gap between where our customers are now and where they want to go. And that's what needs to change.
You know what I found is I went through a course last year, actually 2 years ago at this point. God, and it was I went through the Six Sigma course. So I'm a certified Six Sigma black belt, never once
Okay.
used it. But what I found throughout those teachings is the relentless pursuit of measurements before you start a project, measurements during a project, and then measurements continuously, even after the project is considered finished, so that you can constantly be evaluating whether that project, that change management, whatever it is, was impactful, useful, valuable to those that see it on the end. And it resonated so much, obviously, because of what we do in customer success. And I think so many more, if I could just lay this opinion out there, I think if more customer success folks learned about those tactics, I think they would be so much better at their job.
Yeah, I'm familiar. Let's say I'm a bit familiar with the Six Sigma concept, and I think it yeah, it would be yeah, a great tool in the customer success um, tool set. um, because I like that the focus on really on the accuracy,
Yeah.
because that's what we're missing. So
Hmm.
it's almost like a black box. You get a new customer, you give them, you provide them some services, give them content, etc., etc., and then there's something coming out, whether it's good or bad. But most customer success teams, they have no idea what's going on in between.
Right.
And if they are using a metrics, then it's always the metrics that are easy to measure. So like how many people watch a tutorial, how many people participated in our webinars.
Hmm.
But what you actually need to measure is how many people were able to solve a specific problem after watching a tutorial.
Hmm.
How many customers were able to complete a specific task, a complex task, after they've participated in our webinar?
Even better.
And that's what's really missing.
Even better if you go back to the example I gave though, I'll do you one better. And so you want them to watch a tutorial about how to solve a problem, use a tool to solve a problem. And you mentioned then measuring after the fact whether they were actually able to solve that problem. If you rewind and you measure how many users actually have that problem, you can start to see, okay, what's my real problem statement? How many folks are actually pursuing a solution? Because that number is going to be smaller, versus how many folks understood the explanation we gave, whether it was a webinar, it was an asynchronous video, knowledge base article, and they actually put that into action. And then your job is to optimize every one of those numbers along the way.
Great summary. That's what we need. That's what we need to see.
Marcus, I have an inkling based on our conversation thus far that there's a couple of things maybe within the CS world and practice that you're having trouble understanding why they're still around. So I want to introduce you to a segment that we refer to as BS in CS. And this is your opportunity to stick a fork in a customer success trend or a process that you think just needs to be done away with for good. So if you had to choose one, what is that trend, catchphrase, or otherwise related to customer success that you would like to say goodbye to?
Wow, that's it's really hard to hard to make a choice. Actually, there are so many things. I don't know. I'm a bit torn between Net Promoter Score and scaled customer success. What would you prefer?
Scaled customer success, because that's the hot topic. Everybody goes after net promoter scores. So give us something new and fresh here.
Yeah. So what I find astonishing is that really, as I've mentioned before, so I feel in customer success we've lost our way. When I hear people talk about scaled customer success, I feel that they really don't get what it's all about. It's not meant to replace the customer success manager and have everything automated. So you have automated, you have your all your content written out and delivered automatically to your customers
Mm-hmm.
based on what they're doing in your product. No, the purpose of scaled customer success is to automate the generic stuff so that your customer success managers have more time for doing the valuable stuff. Because at the end of the day, your customers will have some things in common. That happens in the same way for everybody. But then also these companies are different. What you need to do is you need to deliver a mix of content, training, education, and also consulting services. Especially the higher your customers climb on the value ladder. So the more ambitious their goal is, the more specific content and services do they require. So to me, a customer success manager, it's no longer enough to be a product expert. You also need to become a subject expert
Mm-hmm.
because your customer's bottleneck is not the technology, but their own skills and knowledge. So if we're going back to the example with the sales software, so you can teach people how they run it, to run it. But if they're really bad at selling, they won't get a lot of value out of it.
Sure.
So if you want these customers to be successful, to renew and to grow, you need to have them build excellence on the job they need the product for, because then they will become successful. They will grow their contact list, they will increase their sales, then they need more resources from you, then they need more features because they want to do some advanced segmentation stuff, etc., etc. And that's how you really can create so much revenue from existing customer base. If you unlock that, yeah, that box of Pandora, you could call it. But that's what many companies don't see yet.
I think really what you're describing is customer success manager as the strategic advisor.
Yes. So to me, when I think about scaling, then I could best summarize it. You need to scale inputs to scale the outcomes. Why? Because let's assume you would be successful with automating everything and every customer success or almost everything. And now every customer success manager can serve twice as many customers. Okay, so you've cut your costs in half. But what you've not done is scaling the other side. So while you cut the costs in half, you could also have grown the customers by the customer value by 5 or 10 times,
Hmm.
because the growth potential of a customer is always higher than what you can save in costs of maintaining this customer. So let me summarize it, make a short summary.
Yeah.
So we are back again at putting the customer outcomes front and center.
Hmm.
And as I've said, you have to build everything around it.
Hmm.
And to have enough resources to doing the advanced stuff, you need to scale the generic stuff. But most companies did really try to scale all the inputs. That's what they did in the past 5 years or past 10 years.
Hmm.
That really happens everywhere. That's what I've also tried to point out before when I or maybe I forgot to point it out that well. I told you that I'm asking my customers or people I talk with, do you know whether your customers are successful? And most of them don't know. And the reason why they don't know is because there is no automated way to get that kind of information. So
Hmm.
it would require to reach out to the customer and ask the customer, dear customer, what's the outcome you have achieved in the past 3, 6, 7 months, etc., etc. And that's really happening everywhere. That's also what I've meant before. And I say too many customer success teams or companies, they try to build customer success the way they think it should work.
Hmm.
But it's always the customer
Hmm.
who is calling the
As
shots.
opposed to responding to what the customer needs and where the value is.
Exactly. And that's the change of mindset every customer success team and every SaaS company, that they need to master it.
Hmm.
Because if you don't have all that money from investors to burn,
Which
you
nobody
can't
does
build
now.
you can't build a high growth company really by relying on new customer acquisitions,
Hmm.
and also at the same time having a churn rate of like 10 or 15%. It
Hmm.
doesn't work. So new customer acquisitions are really meant to get the foot into the door and then deliver value to these customers to make them retain and to make them grow.
Amen.
That's how the game is played. It's how the game should always have been played. It's just that all that free money that has been floating around clouded people's judgment.
You are all over the place in the CS community. So you are a part of quite a few of the most impactful conversations that happen out there. I want to give you an opportunity to call out your CS player of the week. So who out there in the customer success space has been moving that space forward in the past 7 days in your eyes?
Yeah, most likely Kevin Chiu.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Always. Always. Do you want to add to that, or you just want to leave that there?
Yeah, I think there is some additional information popping out in the very future. It's about some new initiative I'm part of,
Oh, okay.
and yeah,
Very cool.
let's
Teaser.
stay
Leave it
tuned.
there. I like it. I like it. So, how about referrals and recommendations, Marcus? If you could take the audience members and point them in the direction of any one thing, maybe it's a book or a TV show. It doesn't have to be customer success related, or maybe an activity that you're passionate about? Maybe a cause, volunteering, something like that. What would it be?
Oh, good questions. I'm really a fan of being out in nature, and I think more people should start embracing it again.
Period. Get outside, folks. Markus, where can folks connect with you?
The best place to connect with me is on LinkedIn. I'm active every day, basically posting 2-3 times a day. It's the safest place to send me a connection request or a message, and
And guarantee you'll
it
see it.
has the highest odds that I will see it and then read it, and yeah.
And where can folks learn more about your company, Remarkable?
Yeah, also on LinkedIn and on my website, which is maybe I can share a link or something.
Yeah,
Or
yeah, we'll definitely put one in the notes for sure. Markus, thank you so much for being here, for being the brain that you are. I really appreciate it. You bring a lot to the community, and I can't wait to speak to you again in the near future.
yeah, thanks for inviting me. It's been great talking to you.
You've been listening to Lifetime Value, the podcast for customer success professionals. If you like what you've heard, please rate our show and subscribe wherever you find your podcast. Please note that the views expressed in these conversations are attributed only to those individuals on this podcast and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of their respective employers. For all inquiries, please reach out via email to dylan@lifetimevaluepodcast.com. Find us on YouTube via our channel, Lifetime Value, and find us on the socials at Lifetime Value Podcast. Until next time.